screwing up his personal life. You know, killing the horse, messing around.
He didn't kill the horse.
Well, he didn't kill the horse.
You know,
Yes, he did.
no, it's very clear. You know, people, I think audiences, and this is my opinion, not David Chase's, but I think that The Sopranos needs to be seen as I had a minor appearance in that show. You know, I think they what 66 episodes, and I did like 14 or 15 episodes. But at the beginning, when you're introduced to this character, for some reason, Ralph Cifaretto is like enamored with the gladiators. And he says, "Oh, the gladiator this," and he's acting out the gladiator, and he sees the Kirk Douglas show, and he goes, "You know, they didn't have flat tops in ancient Rome. What the hell are they doing?" You know, but what the authors were trying to do there is that Tony financially needed Ralph. He didn't like him, and the episode before, they're almost going to kill a New York boss, right? This wasn't a sanctioned, a hit. What happened is that Ralph's son is accidentally mortally injured by catching arrows that they're shooting into the sky in cardboard boxes, and gets an arrow in his heart. And Ralph pretty much gets his emotional legs cut off, and all the evil that he's been a part of, and we talked about earlier, environment, the kind of abuse that this young boy was exposed to, sexual abuse, and finding a career path that would validate his sickness. And then God is punishing him by taking his son for all the evil that he's done, right? And so that sequence in the end where Tony goes to him and he says, you know, the horse has been in a fire. And he's like, my son, you know, and Ralph is like, my son's in the hospital. My son is dying. And there was a couple of scenes prior where he's at a priest, and he's asking for absolution from the priest, and he says, you know, God's punishing me. I had a terrible life. You know, my mother was bad. You know, he's like all of this innuendo, and he just like both of these men. They go, you know, it's like they get passionately. It's a fight to the death. It's a gladiator fight to the death.
That was a grisly.
And you know, and what you're remembering is that a dead guy was put in a bathtub and his head and his hands were cut off. You know, but if you look at it, it's more. That's what's so brilliant about that show is you don't see it.
What's memorable is the oven cleaner. The oven cleaner.
But he's great.
Yeah, was that scene difficult to film?
Doesn't Ralph spray that in Tony's eyes?
I can't remember who sprayed it in whose eyes, but it was such a gripping scene.
That took 3 days to shoot that sequence.
It was amazing.
And Ralph's great. I mean,
well, who got the oven cleaner? Was it you or was it Tony?
I sprayed him. You know.
It wasn't enough.
Well, you know, the fact is that the great flaw that Ralph had was the fact that he was probably 40 pounds too light. If he had the weight, he would have been able to win over Tony. If you're a Soprano geek, have you ever read the letter that David Chase wrote to Jimmy Gandolfini when Jimmy died? It sounded, you know, it's a beautiful letter. It's wonderful. It's so much about actors and you know and Jimmy and what made, you know, the marriage between Gandolfini and that character great. But there's so much more to that show than, you know, chopping people up. And, you know, the idea is like, I think they created the Ralphie character because it was like, wait a minute, you know, Tony's killing people left and right and they love him. You know, it's like, so, you know, in terms of equality, what's the difference if a guy kills a man or a guy kills a woman? What's the difference if a guy brutally chops up a guy or a guy brutally chops up a girl? You know, they're still human beings. You know, and the audience just love these guys, love Tommy. What's not to love? I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Just to follow up with that, what was James like to work with, James Gandolfini?
You know, just lovable. All of the, you know, it's like we were all from New Jersey, most of us, the tri-state area. And we were, you know, a lot of us, I think most of us all started in the theater. And when I was there, it was still new. There wasn't fights over money or jealousy or anything like that. I was only there for the second and third, or third, fourth season. So it was still fresh, and egos weren't involved. So for me, in my brief stay there, they were overwhelmingly gracious in accepting me into their family, and I felt lucky that I didn't overstay my welcome.
What did you like about working with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith from Bad Boys 1 and 2 and director Michael Bay? Because every time, each one of Michael Bay's done now is Transformers 1, 2, and 3, and soon to be 4. I mean, he's done 4, soon to be 5. He's gotten more action than more of everything. Did you, Will, and Martin have any input of how he did those chase scenes and everything for Bad Boys? And you kept on missing all those when you were playing basketball in the gym. You kept on missing the shots all the time.
Yeah, well, you know, it was easy to shoot that than wait for me to get one. Actually, it was written that way. You know, it was Michael Bay. Michael Bay is a very visual guy, and he. I think people misunderstand Michael because he has a clear image in his head, and I think sometimes he can't understand why people aren't able to comprehend what's in his mind, you know. And he wants to get stuff done, and he sees it, and it's already over for him when he sees it. But doing Bad Boys 2 was really a lot of fun, and I was glad to have the opportunity to be invited back to see how much how we all had grown up a little bit.
Yeah, and changed, because that was like the years apart. It's like you guys all have moved up and grown. Like with Will Smith has done like different movies, like an Independence Day, Men in Black 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And with you've done like The Sopranos. You've done tons of movies and television shows.
Well, I don't make as much as those guys. Believe me, I'd work a lot less if I made what they made. That's not true. Actually, I'm doing it for nothing. Anybody else?
Cypher, The Matrix is my favorite movie of all time. Yeah, your character was great in that movie. And I was curious, like, that one line, I mean, I could talk about the whole thing, the whole experience of it, but I love the scene where he's in the restaurant. Well, not really. He's in the Matrix, where it looks like a restaurant. He's got that steak.
With the agent, when he makes the deal with the agent?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that line. Do you remember anything about that line where it's like, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know it's the Matrix telling my brain is, I just read this, guys, don't worry. I know it's the Matrix telling my brain is juicy and delicious, but you know what, I found out after 9 years, you know. And have you said that? Have you ever actually said that outside of the movie? Like,
No, I've felt it.
yeah.
No, it is. It's to be able to walk through life with the innocence of a child, you know, and I think I'm always surprised when people say to me about the character I played in The Matrix, how they hated him so much because he was such a traitor. You know, how could he turn on his friends like that? And I think, like, well, you know, if I had the opportunity to become Mel Gibson, or who's the flavor of the month now? Who's the big movie star today? that everybody
Chris
wants to
Hemsworth
be?
or Chris Evans from,
Yeah, okay, so that guy, right? If I could, you know, that I could have my wildest dreams come true and not have memory of ever betraying anybody, to be able to get back into this reality where I had, you know, I was the king of the universe, and not know, you know, who wouldn't take that deal? You know, who's kidding who? You know, I always felt that this Cypher character was the most human character in that movie because he was the only one that admitted doubt. He had doubt. He had doubt about this, you know, the choice that he made by taking
that blue pill.
right, and he had doubt in Morpheus, and he believed that Morpheus was going to get him killed, and he had love for Trinity that he was never going to be able to fulfill because she was in love with Neo. You know, it's like it's time to get off the bus. Sir.
In the early days of your career at stage and film, was there anybody that was a mentor or kind of helped you along that stood out among others?
God, there were so many people. So many people. I talk about that in my new book, Asylum, the last book that I did. But you know, the people that come to mind in the beginning were Eli Wallach and Ann Jackson. Actually, Eli, I just went to his shiva. He died at 99. John Casal was someone. Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner. And there's hundreds and thousands of people that came across my path that were mentors, who gave you a nudge when you thought that it's time to give up on your dreams, and they would say, stick around. You know, I remember one casting director, Nick Ramos, who said, you know, Joey, stick around. He said, because you're going to have a career as you get older. You know, you've got a character face, and you right now you haven't thrown into it. Little things like that kept me, you know, optimistic. So be able to get up and keep working and being blissfully ignorant that I was going to be able to get my dream. You know, if I knew now what I then what I knew now, I'd pack it away. You know, at 18, I said to myself, I'm going to give myself 10 years to be a working actor. If I can't make a living as a working actor by the time I'm 28 years old, I'll have to find something else to do.
What do you think you would have gone for?
Oh, I would have been an agent or a manager. You know, what I do, I'm a producer, restaurateur, all the shit that I do anyway. It's almost a quarter up. So we should stop.
Pretty much. About quarter up.
You know, I'm glad to have this time to talk to y'all.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, stick around. Lee Ehrenberg is up at 3 o'clock. Should be a lot of fun.
Jersey over here, kid.
Thanks.